All right, welcome everyone. We're here for a 15-minute yoga break. You're welcome to find a place to sit, perhaps in a chair or on maybe closer to the edge of a couch. You might find that a hard bottom chair can be a little easier with some of the movements, but if all you have is a recliner or a soft couch, that's okay. All I have is this futon. So you're welcome to find a place to sit and perhaps lengthening your spine. So you might lengthen your spine to the sky and maybe noticing your breath. I noticed I was holding my breath. So if that is something you notice, you might invite the breath back in. So that's one option. And if you're inviting the breath back in, you might notice the pacing of your breath. You might notice if the inhales and exhales are similar in length or are they different. And you might decide to keep your breath as it is. You might choose to keep your breath natural as it is. Or you might experiment with shifting the length of the inhale and exhale. So you might make the inhale and exhale more even, like equal in length. And one way to do that is to count your inhale and exhale. So maybe if you're counting in for 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you might breathe out, maybe counting out for 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're welcome to keep breathing like that, choosing any number that you like to count to, choosing to count the same pace or faster or slower. And that other option might be to just notice your breath as it is. You might notice movement with your breath, like maybe movement in your belly or chest. And perhaps turning your head to one side. So you might be turning your head to one side, maybe turning it part of the way, or you might turn it as far as you can. You have a choice. And if you've turned your head to the side, you might bring it back to center and perhaps switching sides. So you could turn your head to the other side. And if you're turning your head to the side, you might turn it part of the way, or you could turn it as far as you can. You have a choice. If your head is turned to the side, you might bring it back to center and maybe tilting your head to one side. So you might be tilting your head to one side, maybe so that your ear is moving in the direction of your shoulder. And if you're tilting your head to one side, you might notice sensation in the sides of your neck. You might notice it somewhere else. Or maybe not at all. If your head is tilted to the side, you might bring it back to center and perhaps switching sides. So you could tilt your head the other way. So you might be tilting your head to one side. Maybe noticing your breath. Maybe noticing movement as you breathe, perhaps in your chest or your belly, maybe through your nose. And if your head is tilted to the side, you might bring it back to center. Maybe rolling your head from side to side or in a full circle. So you might do that a couple times if you're choosing to roll your head. And perhaps bringing your head back to center and maybe moving your shoulders. So one way to move your shoulders could be to roll them forward, or you might roll them back. So you might be moving your shoulders, maybe noticing your breath. And if you've been moving your shoulders, you might bring them back to center and perhaps reaching one arm towards the sky. So you might lift one arm up towards the sky and maybe staying here. Another option could be to lean to the other side. So you might place your bottom arm on your chair or on your leg, and maybe leaning to the side. If you're leaning to the side, you might notice some sensation in your back or maybe the sides of your body, maybe somewhere else, or perhaps not at all. If you're leaning to the side, you might lift back up to center and perhaps changing sides. So you could lift your arm back up, or your other arm rather. So you might have one arm lifted and maybe staying here. Another option might be to lean to the side. So you might be leaning to one side, maybe noticing your breath. And if you're leaning to one side, you might lift back up, and if your arm is lifted, you might lower it. And perhaps placing your feet on the floor if they're not already. You might lengthen your spine and perhaps turning your torso to the right. So you might turn your torso to the right, maybe placing your left hand on the outer edge of your right leg. So you might be turning to the right. Maybe noticing sensation in your back or the front of your torso as you do this. You might notice it somewhere else. Maybe not at all. And perhaps making your way back to center. You're welcome to switch sides. So you might be turning towards the left. You might turn your torso towards the left. Maybe placing your right hand on the outer edge of your left leg, or you could place it on your left leg somewhere. Perhaps noticing sensation in your back or shoulders. You might notice it somewhere else. You may not notice any sensation at all. If you're turning to the side, you might face back to center and perhaps extending one leg out in front of you on the floor. So you might place one foot on the floor, maybe straightening your leg or moving it towards straight. So you might have one leg straight and perhaps lengthening your spine to the sky. Another option might be to hinge at your hips, folding forward, perhaps placing your arms or forearms on your legs, or maybe placing your hands on the floor. You have a choice. Maybe noticing your breath. If you're folded forward, you might lift back up. And if your leg is extended out, you might bring it back in and perhaps switching sides. So you might extend your other leg out in front of you, maybe moving your extended leg towards straight, and perhaps lifting your spine to the sky. You might stay here. Or another option could be to fold forward, maybe placing your hands on your legs or on the floor. You have a choice. Maybe noticing your breath. And if you're folded forward, you're welcome to lift back up. Perhaps bringing your foot back in if it's extended, and maybe crossing your right leg over your left. So you might cross your right ankle over your left thigh, or some part of your right leg over your left thigh, maybe opening your knee to the side. So you might have like this figure four kind of shape. And you're welcome to lengthen your spine to the sky, or you could hinge at your hips and fold forward, maybe placing your hands on your legs or on the floor. You have a choice. Perhaps releasing. You're welcome to switch sides. So you might cross your left leg over your right. So maybe your left ankle might be crossed over your right thigh. Maybe opening your knee to the side. And maybe staying lifted, or you could fold forward. You have a choice. And perhaps releasing. So you might place both feet on the floor, and one option might be to place your hands on your legs. Maybe as you're inhaling, you might move your belly and chest forward. Maybe moving your shoulders back, you might lift your chin. And perhaps as you're exhaling, you might round your spine, maybe rounding your shoulders, perhaps lowering your chin towards your chest. You're welcome to do that a couple more times. Maybe inhaling, you might move your belly and chest forward, maybe opening your shoulders, perhaps lifting your chin. And maybe as you exhale, you might round your spine. And maybe doing that one more time. And maybe making your way back to center. And if you like, you might extend one of your legs out in front of you. So you might extend one leg out in front of you, but this time you might choose to lift your heel up off the floor. So you might lift your heel off the floor, maybe lifting it an inch or two, maybe lifting it a foot or two. So you might lift your foot off the floor, maybe noticing some sensation in the lifted leg. You might notice it somewhere else, or maybe not at all. If your leg is lifted, you might lower it, and perhaps switching sides. So you're welcome to extend your other leg up in front of you. And you might have your foot off the floor a couple inches, or you might have your foot as high as your chair. You have a choice. Maybe noticing your breath. Perhaps releasing. And maybe placing your hands on your legs, you might lean your torso back slightly. So you might lean your torso back, perhaps keeping your back off of the back of your chair. And you might notice some sensation in your abdominals. And one option might be to stay here. Another option might be to lift your arms out in front of you. So you might straighten your arms, lifting them out in front of you. You have a choice. If your arms are lifted, you might lower them. And if you're leaning back, you might lift back up to center. And perhaps placing the palms of your hands together in front of your chest. So you might have your hands together at heart center. And maybe as you inhale, you might reach your arms up overhead. And perhaps as you exhale, you might bring your arms down and around by your sides. Maybe doing that 2 more times. Perhaps inhaling, reaching your arms up. And maybe exhaling, you might bring your arms down and around by your sides and back to center. Maybe one more time. And you're welcome to pause, maybe placing your hands on your legs. You could lean back in your chair. You might just choose to rest for a couple moments. So I'll quiet my voice for about 15 seconds while we rest. And you're welcome to stay resting longer, or you might choose to wiggle your fingers and toes, perhaps lifting back up to seated if you're not already there. It's been my pleasure to guide your practice today. Peace. Thank you so much for practicing, and you're welcome to go to Pathways University MN for Minnesota.com to look at other offerings, including my Trauma Center Trauma Sensitive Yoga class. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, Jen. Really appreciate it, Sassy. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.